college degrees is rising 8 times as fast as wages are growing. The good news, this won't change the number of kids enrolling in overpriced colleges because they no longer know how to multiply anything by 8. I'm Dr. Duke, he's Dave Fiorazzo, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Many of you have been asking about Katie. I'm excited to announce that she is busy propagating the species. She and her husband have had their second baby, a healthy baby girl this time. And yes, she does still believe in babies having genders, but don't worry, she will return. In the meantime, we've got a pretty good substitute. We've got Dave Fiorazzo, who is the host of Christ and Culture. I urge you to watch that show. It is a fascinating look at what's going on in the world through the lens of biblical Christianity. So we're glad to have him. And today we start with the skyrocketing cost of college. As studies show, tuition is rising 8 times faster than wages. Quick, Dave, what's 8 times 1?
8?
You went to school.
And I've been out of school for a while.
Yeah, you went to school before the woke revolution. Kids don't know that anymore. And this is just a completely unsurprising. So we've got wages decreasing or rising very slowly. We've got the cost of college tuition is going through the roof. There's a story we're going to do maybe next week when we can get to it. Something like the Ohio State University has almost 100 diversity officers. Let that sink in. 100 diversity officers, and they're about to hire 51 different professors of critical race theory. And you're wondering why the cost of college has gotten so far. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let any of these universities fool you. This has nothing to do with building construction or paying for sports teams. This has nothing to do with the dorm your kid's going to stay in. And God knows it has nothing to do with our faculty payroll, right? I still repeat, in my 25 years of being a college professor, I can count on one hand, the number of years I got raises. You're not paying left-wing faculty in general and left-wing faculties. This money is not going to them. It's going to this huge level of diversicrats. You've got an entire subclass, upper middle class group of people at the college campus. They're more important than faculty. They're more important than students. They're secondary only to the high administration, the chancellors, the presidents, the vice chancellors. This is the cream of the crop at universities now. And if you're paying, I think we did a story a couple of years ago. Michigan has almost 100 diversity officers as well, and about half of them were making over $100,000 a year. Over half of them. You want to know why the cost of college is so expensive? It's not about programming. It's not about classrooms. It's not about teachers. It's about this incredible explosion in the administration of radical social justice.
Wokeness. So let me ask you this. If all these colleges have diversity officers, and it's not just Ohio State University.
It's all of them.
Equity ambassadors, inclusion officers, who's paying for all that?
Well, your kids are. Your kids are, and it's largely being funded by the federal government. Think about the racket, right? You got a racket now, but one of the first, people don't ever talk about this in the legacy that is Barack Obama, but one of the first and most disastrous things he did, people let this one slide, is that he largely federalized the student loan program, which means they didn't trust banks to give out loans. See, here's the thing. If your daughter comes to a bank and says, hey, I want $400,000 over the next 5 years to study feminism and lesbian erotic dance at my local university, any smart banker is going to, even any smart lesbian banker is going to say to her, no. If you go to the same kid goes to the same banker and says, hey, I need $400,000 to do my pre-med biology major so I can become a doctor, well, that's a much more logical investment for a bank. And of course, according to Barack Obama, that was racist, right? You should be, whatever you want to major in, whatever frivolous thing, you should get the same amount of money as anybody else. This is outcome-based nonsense. So since then, we have had an explosion in the student loan debt crisis, right? And so what is Biden already doing? He already waived about $1 billion in student aid, right? He's already quietly done that. And the hope is by the progressive left, he'll erase almost all student debt. So we pay the taxes. The taxes are handed out in these loans to kids to major in stupid things. Then those kids default on the loans, and it's wiped off the slate. Wow. We're literally, and pardon my expression, pissing money down a drain.
And it's our money.
Exactly.
That's the thing that's infuriating, especially to those who have paid off their loans years ago and were responsible. But Duke, one thing I wanted to point out that I think needs to be emphasized is the fact that the wages have not gone up. It says it's worrying that the wages of fresh college grads have been on the decline. Mm-hmm. They're not rising, some are declining, and yet the costs of these universities are skyrocketing.
Well, we are at the point now. You remember the old canard about 15, 20 years ago when you and I were old enough to be young men. We remember that we're always told that universities would pay for themselves, right? That no matter what you spent on a university education over the long course of your life, you would be better off having the degree than not. That the last 10 years, that has not been true, and it's getting worse every year. Now you're not recuperating that money, and we have a lot of college graduates with majors in things like creative writing and women's lesbian ballet who can't get jobs, right? And so consequently, their debt piles up. They're living in their mom's basement. They're doing nothing productive for society. So this is the crowd that votes for Joe Biden, right? Because he promises on the other end to waive the money you and I paid in taxes for this nonsense. But you need to know that, mom and dad. Just because you send your kid to college, even some prestigious college, don't think for 1 second that investment is going to pay off. I get it. If you're sending them to do something like biology or lab work or become an attorney or something, perhaps that money will be recouped. But for the average humanities, the average social science major, which makes up what, probably 65% of enrollments in college campuses, it is not worth the money. It really isn't.
Is this by design? Because one of the sentences in this article, it says, if anything, college education is moving out of the reach of students from low and middle income families. Isn't that interesting?
Well, it's ironic, isn't it, that financially it's moving out of the reach, but ideologically it's going the other way, right? What is the only thing we ever talk about with regards to college education? It's inclusion. So they're bringing to campus kids who shouldn't be here. They're literally taking unfortunately, many of them are inner city ethnic kids who don't have the education, don't have the degree, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the study habits, they don't have the support to be in college. They're not ready. But we're taking them now because to not take them would be non-inclusive. So here's the thing. You're bringing in more and more kids who have nothing and piling low, because you're not giving all those kids scholarships. And that's the irony, that you're giving any. You're giving now scholarship money and grant money to kids just so you can say you have that race at your campus in higher numbers, even if those kids can't make it. And then then once they're on campus, you can't fail them. Because if we bring these inner city kids who really, many of them don't belong, we bring them to campus, we shower them with free books and free dormitories, we give them grants here and there, right, so that their debt is minimum, then when we get them in our classrooms and they can't do the work, guess what? We have to lower the classroom standard, because to bring these kids all the way up to pasty white Oshkosh from a place like Milwaukee or Chicago and then to fail them is worse as if you never brought them before. So inclusion means they can't be failed. And so you're literally handing out social degrees, just socially promoting them. If this sounds like a pyramid scheme and a scam, Mom, that's because it is.
Yes.
Don't shovel your money into this particular stove. It's not worth it.
In our next story, woke college majors threatened under controversial Florida bill. Florida lawmakers are weighing a bill that would cut state-funded scholarship money for college students pursuing degrees with low employment prospects. SB 86, Duke.
Yes, indeed. And this is the logical consequence of the story we just read. Believe it or not, friends, there is method to my madness here. The story is... And throw it out there. Where does that come from? Method to my madness. Anybody want to take a gamble out there in the peanut gallery? Anybody?
Shakespeare.
Where?
I don't know. That was just a stab in the dark.
You got it. You got it. It's from Hamlet. A method to our madness on the Dr. Duke Show. We just read you that really disgusting first story about how the cost of education is college education radically accelerated over what your kids are going to make over the course of their life. Here we have a situation where a Florida legislature, which is dominated by Republicans, is now trying to do something about it. And I'm really torn by this because on the one hand, what they're doing, there's this huge pile of money, right? Again, Florida taxpayer money, right? From the Florida's Bright Futures Scholarship. So what they've done is they've taken tax money, the state of Florida, and they've set it aside for these grants that they want to give Florida kids to encourage them to go to school. But now there's a new twist. They're trying to make it so that they will not give these grants to kids unless they have serious majors. Now, as we just pointed out, that's exactly right. Your kid goes to college, he better have a serious major. He's not going to make that money back, right? And we've already talked about how wicked it was for the Obama administration to start handing out huge debt to kids who are majoring in garbage majors. But that's the problem. And this is what I want to say about this. As a humanities professor, I know that the humanities are perhaps even more important than STEM careers. Degrees in science and math and technology are fantastic. They'll give you a career, they'll pay you a high wage, they will contribute to the technological advancement of the country, but they're not going to teach you how to be a patriot. They're not going to teach you how to be a lover of God. They're not going to teach you how to be moral and virtuous. They're not going to give you a cultural education so that when you put down your lab coat and go home at night, you can appreciate an opera, not just Monday Night Football. The humanities in their right mind are really necessary, and I would argue even more necessary. It is the humanities that used to civilize people. It was the humanities that gave people their moral opportunities. It was humanities that drew boundaries about right or wrong, true and false. That's gone now. So sympathetic as I am, do I think every kid needs a course in Shakespeare? Hell yes. Do I think every kid needs a course in the Bible or colonial American history? Absolutely. So even though I want to defend the humanities against what Florida's doing, I turn around and I see what liberal progressive professors have made of the humanities. They are one long exercise now in critical race theory. So when you read Shakespeare, you're reading queer Shakespeare, or you're reading environmentalist Shakespeare, or you're reading feminist Shakespeare. When you read the colonial period, all you're reading now is 1619 slaves are everything curriculum. So given that the liberal progressive professors of humanities have trashed their own discipline, I have no sympathy for them. For us, we deserve it. We deserve not to get that money. And quite frankly, I'm siding with Florida on this. And I hope that comes to every college in this country, right? Those grants there is, what money is available, really ought to go to kids who are signing up for courses in coursework that is not overrun by left-wing politics. Here's the other kicker, Dave. Even the science and technology is not safe. Over the last year, we've seen what? Encroachments by critical race theory into science. We're being told by mathematicians that math is racist. We're being told by scientists in universities that the scientific method and empiricism are white supremacy. So how much longer do we give none of those grants to anything?
I'm guessing there aren't too many issues that you are actually torn about.
No, we destroyed the humanities. I've been saying this for 20 years. Humanities professors made the humanities irrelevant. We decided that teaching diverse works from diverse authors, it's not important that you know what Milton says. It's not important to know what Plato says. It's not important anymore to know what medieval poetry was like or Renaissance painting. All of that's white supremacy. So, okay, fine. You've turned all those humanities courses into the same course. Race, class, gender, white people suck. Repeat. Race, class, gender, white people suck. Repeat. That's all it is. In fact, you don't
Sounds like a rap song.
Couldn't it be, hey, suckers? It's like Little Nas, I'll get some tennis shoes made with the blood of white, cisgendered white men in my soles of my shoes. We'll do a little...
Don't give them any ideas.
I'll give a little demonic lap dance. Can you see me? Shaking it on Satan's lap like Lil Nas.
Oh, Lord.
And what I'm telling you is that we were the caregivers. We were handed a gift. We professors of the humanities were entrusted with the collective civilization of Western culture. That which was wrong, but so much more was right. We were handed the legacy of Shakespeare and Beethoven and Thomas Jefferson. And what did we do? We peed it all away with critical race theory. We turned it into anti-civilization. We lied to students. We destroyed history. We destroyed our culture. So why do we deserve any money? The humanities will go away no matter what the left says because there's no place for them anymore. And that day's coming. That reckoning is upon us.
In the next story, not surprising, but British University Guide for Academics bans the terms mother and father. So this writer says, how else would you explain a guide for academics who write under the university's name that bans the use of the words mother and father? They also ban the words man and woman, although in a world of a million different genders, that's not surprising, they are to be replaced by the words individual and guardian. And they've also banned the words diabetic, and for some reason, anyway, they've eliminated age discrimination. One titanic blow by banning any reference to seniors, elderly, pensioners, youngsters, and the dreaded mature workforce.
Yeah, this is, I mean, again, method to our madness. We talked about how college degrees aren't worth it anymore financially. We looked at how Florida's trying to push back against critical race theory by not handing out grants to kids who major in right-wing, left-wing, talking point, progressive critical race theory, and now you see why. This is what humanities professors do. I promise you, there are very few chemists at Manchester University who's sitting around a table talking about this. There are very few of the biology faculty involved in this. This is your social justice warriors. These are your deans of inclusivity. These are your English professors. These are the ones that the gender studies, the women's studies professors who are coming up with this garbage. And they feel like they literally have the right. They think they have morality and God on their side. They think that they are better than you because they're not going to let you argue that there is such a thing as man and woman anymore. This is and I've make this point every time transgenderism comes up. This is how absurd it is. In the year 2021, the word man and women doesn't exist. They don't exist. Not in biology, not in reality, not in gender. They don't exist. To say that male and absolute male and female exist is to be a transphobe, and that could get you fired for a university, despite what biology says. Yet, 176 different made-up genders. We have to pretend like each and every one of them are absolutely true, even when they are completely nonsense. Wow. There's a gender category called vapogender, right? Gender that as soon as you identify what gender you are, it seeps away like steam, like vapor, so you don't have it anymore. Mirror gender, right? That you adopt whatever gender the person you're talking to is. It's as stupid as this. Right? And so go through the list here. This guide to inclusive language. Here's some Mike's got on the screen for us here. We use gender neutral terms rather than those that make sex distinction. Notice that it's not about gender. Remember we were told, the lie we were told 5 years ago? That sex is sex. We believe that. But gender is what's malleable. This isn't about gender anymore. It's about sex, right? We use gender neutral terms rather than those that make sex distinction. You or they or them, not he's or she or him or her. People, person, or individuals rather than man and women. But here's my problem, and I do this every time we do this as well. Look at the word person, P-E-R-S-O-N. Do you see anything wrong with that word, Dave? Person.
Person.
There's
S-O-N in
exactly.
it. Oh, my goodness.
If
gotta get rid of that.
mankind has to go because, men don't exist, then why do you have sons there? Oh, let's go back. How about the word humanity, Dave?
Oh, human is in it.
Human.
Oh, wait, man is in it too.
Is it not?
Oh, my goodness.
In other words, where does this nonsense stop? It doesn't stop. Workforce, not manpower. That's an interesting one to me. So you're getting rid of men and you're becoming militarized. When I see the word workforce, right, I think did you just militarize the word work? I think you did.
Wow.
But don't worry. They'll get around to fixing those secondary offenses. Yeah. They won't forget about them.
So how long before Hallmark changes all their greeting cards and takes off Mother's Day and puts Happy Guardian's Day?
You've got the things are doing that now. I mean, you've got literally tampon, like I believe was it Tampax? One of the big makers of tampons actually stopped promoting them specifically for women. Degendered their packaging. Because Dave, right, that men can menstruate.
Menstruate? Is that a word?
Well, even that's offensive. Men can menstruate, right?
Yeah, that even
but it's got the word men
in
it, but they menstruate. So here's the thing. If women menstruate, does that mean that men womenstrate?
I guess it would have to.
But
if you buy that logic.
But women's just as offensive as men. So we have to come up with a whole other word with it. I had a Dr. Duke anecdote. I had a health teacher when I was in my Catholic school all those years ago, and he was kind of a smart ass. He looked just like Barney Rubble, by the way, this guy, just exactly like Barney Rubble. But he was our sex ed teacher for a couple weeks in health. And when he gave us the test on the reproductive system, he said, okay, when you're done with the first page, turn your testes ovaries. That's what passed for wit at my high school. It's time for some real education indeed. After all of the educational abuse, Dave, that we just watched for this last 20 minutes, time to focus it on something redeemable. If the humanities hadn't been hijacked by politically correct douchebags, you might still study things like John Milton's Paradise Lost, the great epic. So I'm declaring this Paradise Lost week. And as Christ and culture guy, you know, Paradise Lost is John Milton's great epic about the fall of Adam and Eve, one of the great works of literary history. It's the only really great English epic. You've got the great epics of the Greeks, you've got Dante, you've got Dante's Inferno, and then you've got Paradise Lost, right? Which is the only really fully formal epic in the English language. And Milton wrote it in 1667. He was what we would today call an evangelical Christian. Back then they called them Puritans, right? The same folks who in 1620 sought succor in this country from a tyrannous, religiously unfree government. Milton wrote Paradise Lost about the fall of Adam and Eve, and he knew when he wrote this he was going to have to write a lot about God. He was literally going to have to include God as a character in his book. And he knew. How does one put words in the mouth of God and not come off sounding foolish? How does one create God as a speaking character and not diminish the majesty of God? Well, Milton, I'm not going to say he succeeded 100%, but he probably came closer than anybody else in the history of literature to making a God convincingly sound like what God would be. But he knew how difficult his work, the work was cut out for him in trying to write this poem about the founding of the creation of Adam and Eve, the mind of God, the fall of Adam and Eve, the war in heaven between Satan and the angels. And so in the prologue to the book, he's asking God to come and help him. If I'm going to do this for you, God, I need your help. And what's a beautiful twist, whereas Homer in the Odyssey and the Iliad began his poem by calling on the muses, right? These goddesses of epic poetry to come and speak in my ear. What does the Christian do? He rejects all that paganism and calls directly for the Holy Spirit. And he speaks it here. He's calling for the Holy Spirit to help. He says, in writing this poem, Milton says, "And chiefly thou, O Spirit, you, O Spirit, who dost prefer before all temples the upright heart and pure, instruct me, for thou knowest. Thou, O Holy Spirit, from the first was present, and with thy mighty wings outspread, dove-like satst brooding upon the vast abyss, and madest it pregnant. I'm asking you, Holy Spirit of God," what Jesus called the Comforter, right? "What in me," Milton says, "what in me is dark illumine, and what is low raise and support, that to the height of this great argument I may assert eternal providence, and justify the ways of God to men. If you don't help me, I can't do it. If you help me, take what is dark in me and give me light." Now, that doesn't just mean the light of inspiration from the Holy Spirit. Remember, Milton was blind when he set about writing this great poem. Completely blind. So much like Beethoven went deaf before he heard his Ninth Symphony. Milton was blind. And so what he did to do this, when he's talking about darkness and light all throughout the poem, he's reflecting upon his own blindness. He didn't think he was able to do it, but with the help of the Holy Spirit, he dictated for 8 hours a day. He had 3 of his daughters. He dictated this poem to them. Pretty staggering what the Holy Spirit did do for John Milton. And if we had anything like normal and decent humanities programs in colleges, maybe your kids would be getting that instead of the kind of nonsense they're getting in college. All right, if you're a fan of the show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support our Patriot Club, and we'll send you our signature tumbler. Mine is filled with Dr. Pepper. I believe it was vintage 1989, so one of the better years for Dr. Pepper. You could just taste the caramel, just a little bit of that. Visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. All you got to do. And just a quick reminder, please download our Freedom Project Media app. Take 2 minutes to do it. You'll get access to 17 new shows a week, every week, plus our entire library of content. Simply search Freedom Project Media in your app store and make sure to allow us to notify you. And that wraps up this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. He's Dave. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.